Item, your host, John Coleman.
Many teams find it useful to estimate effort. It's useful for them in that they can socially get an alignment in terms of how difficult a piece of work is. How accurate the estimate is almost besides the point. It's more about getting some alignment, getting a common understanding of what's needed and what needs to be done to solve a particular problem or to avail of a passing opportunity. There's a number of ways for estimating effort. One popular way is using time. Time in two ways. One way is estimating, say, ideal time. How much ideal time would it take me to build or deliver such and such a requirement or desirement? That's one way. I don't like it because people go into all sorts of details. They need all sorts of details in order to provide an estimate. And there's no such thing really as ideal time anyway. So I'm not really a big fan of that. Another time option would be to use reference items from the past. So if you use reference items in the past, you say, well, this feels similar to a piece of work we did last year, and that took around about 2 months. There's a touch of genius about that because when you look at something that you did maybe a year ago or however long it was, and you knew how long it took, that time includes waiting time. You don't remember the estimated time, you remember how long it took, which includes the waiting time. So that's more accurate, but that's still problematic using reference items from the past, because if you have some unexpected mess or unexpected complications, maybe something that we could do in 2 months or 2 days last year is going to take 3 times longer this year because actually there's some considerations we didn't really take into account. So overall, I'm not a huge fan of time estimation. I'm not a fan of story point estimation either, but let's go through it. So some people like to use story points to consider effort considering complexity and risk. And so what they do is they have a kind of a scale. A lot of people use the Fibonacci scale. It's the natural order by which things get bigger, apparently. Combination of the last two numbers, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. When you get to 21, you start rounding, although some people just keep it as the exact number all the way up. But if something's 89 points, how do you know it's not 93 points? It's not exact. So that's why the rounding kind of happens above that. Some people use planning poker. I'm not a huge fan of planning poker because it takes too long. And I'd much prefer, because the estimates are wrong anyway. So what I prefer is that we do some relative estimation. There's a couple of ways you can do that. If we were all face to face, you could have some T-shirt sizes on how relative, how much effort there is for each of these particular items. A lot of us are working virtually now, so. What I find even more useful would be just looking at the entire backlog, and I ask people, what's the smallest effort item on that list, and people very quickly point out, which item is the smallest, and then I ask any other items about that size. Yeah, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, so I call them small and map them to story points of 1. Then small, medium would be size of 2, but I skip that. I just go to medium, which would be 3. So I say, what's the next size up in the backlog that you can see in terms of effort? Oh, this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay. Any others? Yeah, this one as well. Okay. And then again, I skip the next size again. So I skip the 5, the medium, large, go to large. And we have 8. So any items that are the next size up, we're at large now. This one, this one, this one, this one. Any others? No, that's it. Okay, then I skip the XL, map it to the 13, and then I go up to the 21 or round it to 20. And you get the idea. within 20 minutes, I'm able to help people to estimate an entire product backlog just using that. And if you're using a story map, it's even easier. In a story map, what you might do is you might have your product goal, and you break your product goal down into outcomes or effects, and or mini goals, if you like, sub goals of the product goal. And those outcomes, effects, mini goals get broken down into maybe high level deliverables, call them epics if you want, big items that need to be delivered to deliver those outcomes, effects, mini goals. And then you can break those high level deliverables down into product backlog items and stories, if you use stories, for example. And so what I do is, visually looking at the story map, it's much easier to spot the small ones, the medium, and so on. And so within 20 minutes, any backlog, particularly when you use the story map, I'd have it estimated, and you can roll up the points, because the product backlog items roll up into the high level deliverables, roll up into the outcomes, effects, roll up into the goal. So you get a range about how many story points the backlog might be. And you might say, so what? Because it's a bit arbitrary. But then what we do is, particularly if the team has just started, just got together, we talk about, well, what do we think we can do in the first sprint? If hopefully we decided already how long our sprint is. How much stuff do we think we can do according to our definition of done in a sprint? And so the team said, well, we think we can do this one, that one, and that one. Okay, so you just add up the points. Okay, 17 points in those items. There's 170 items in the 170 points in the backlog. Roughly 10 sprints. Add some salt and pepper. It's going to be more than that. It's going to be a bit of a range, but you get a kind of a rough order about how much work is in front of you. It's an approach that people use, but it's really more important that you use it to understand the work more, not that you kind of get I guess, obsessed with how accurate your estimates are, because your estimates will always be wrong. We're dealing with unknown unknowns a lot of the time, even known unknowns where we need experts to be brought in. And there's going to be unexpected mess as well, like I mentioned earlier on. So it just gives you a kind of a rough size what's going on. So for me, map t-shirt sizes to story points, skip every second size to just make it easier. And I don't stop at Excel. I keep going up to quadruple Excel, because what you don't want is a situation where you've under-egged how much work is in front of us, because there could be some massive elephants in there, and we want to see those elephants. And those elephants who are there, that's a signal that we need to break them down. In fact, anything really, maybe double extra large or bigger, if it's weight on the backlog, you might want to be looking at ways that you can break it down without kind of getting too much into it, because at the end of the day, we just need work that fits into a sprint, and Scrum that fits decently into a sprint. Sometimes I hear people saying, well, we worked very hard this sprint, and this was worth 13 points. So can we bank 8 points this sprint, and carry over 5 points to the next sprint, because we worked so hard, we want to get credit for it, and so on. The answer is no. You don't get any credit. You get credit when it's done. When it's done according to the definition of done. We're transparent with Scrum. We're not trying to give illusions of progress. If it's not done, it's not done. And it's quite possible that it's not 13 points. Actually, it's much bigger than that. And you've probably learned a lot more about that work. And now you understand that maybe you should be, maybe you need to do some experiments in terms of how you want to kind of simplify this situation, so that that it's not so problematic. Another thing that I see is people conflate, or they get confused, and they mix up estimated effort with value. And so they focus on velocity, the number of story points they're delivering, or the number of items they're delivering per sprint. They're focusing on speed rather than value, and so that's okay. It's fine to look at speed, but you also need to look at, are you delivering the right things? Are we getting good feedback from our customers? Are we delivering value, and so on? I've tried to estimate value a number of ways. I had one occasion where we could actually directly attribute the product backlog items to money, and it was interesting because we didn't actually use money as the ordering factor, because we had 1 million people using an app, and we needed 30 million people using the app. And so we needed the app to be more attractive, that you download it, that you might use it. And we wanted people to be sticking to the app and can completing their journeys and user journeys on the app and so on. So we focused more on marketability of the app and on usability of the app, and not on money. So I've never actually used money as a way of ordering the items, even though we have some idea about how much money we want to make and so on. So I like what Robert Anna said, one of my peers. He says value isn't absolute; it's relative. So really, what you can do is, in a similar way that you can go up with story points for effort, considering complexity and risk, you can also come up with a rough order of magnitude about how valuable the items are on your product backlog. Exact same process. If you have a product backlog, fine. If it's a story map, it's even easier. You look at the product backlog, you look at your story map, you say to the people who are there, customers, end users, product owner, whoever's there, kind of thing, would be able to have a good view on how valuable things are. Hopefully, the product owner would know. I ask, what's the least valuable item here on this backlog, on the story map? And people are able to point them out fairly quickly, but maybe there are dependencies or something like that. They don't have value in themselves, but they are enabling features, and so it's really something that is needed to be done, but it doesn't actually have value in itself. So when you're doing that, you can find, okay, what's the lowest value item? Then have we found all the small value items? Yeah, we have. Okay, now let's look at the mediums, and then look at the larges, and then look at the double extra larges. I skip every second size. Then maybe quadruple extra large, and might even have massive one, 6 times extra large. But usually top it out at 4 or 5 times extra large, because people often tell me that the value is extra large, but how extra large, some items are more extra large than others. So I don't stop the scale. So that's a typical mistake that I see people making, where they stop the scale at extra large. I keep going up. And then I kind of cheat a little bit, because when I ask people to consider how valuable things are, I refer to in my blog posts on what is value, which might include, for example, learning, knowledge value. It might include customer end user value. It might be to do with organizational value in terms of maybe cutting costs or improving employee satisfaction. It could be to do with maybe societal value in terms of maybe contributing towards maybe one of the maybe more than one of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There could be all sorts of factors contributing to value, but also risk. So the avoidance of risk. So maybe maybe we're trying to avoid mess. Maybe we're trying to reduce mess that we have already created. Maybe we're trying to reduce a concept called failure demand, where we've already delivered stuff in the past that we didn't quite do right for the customer. We kind of irritated people, and we delivered stuff on time, but we actually irritated some of our customers and end users. And maybe we need to reduce some of that so we can improve the customer experience again. So value considers quite a number of factors. And I show that quite clearly to the people that I'm working with. I say, considering all of these things, what's the relative order of value? And so I'm kind of cheating there, because learning's in there, risk is in there. But then very simply, you can just, if you want to order the backlog, you can then just divide your estimated value by your estimated risk, and by estimated effort. And so what you'll see then is a very different order, because some items have higher bang for buck. And so maybe you should do those first. And so that's Henrik Nieberg as well talks about that in his Agile Product Ownership in a Nutshell video as well. Very popular approach for ordering your backlog. Now, I just want to step back a bit, because I'm not a huge fan of story points. I know that some people like them, and they find that it's easier to have conversations when they do that. And that's really good. I'm not a fan, so I much prefer people right size. That's the Kanban side of me, I guess. And instead of kind of going through all these Fibonacci numbers about how big something is, it's either one, too big, or no way. So it either fits within the sprint comfortably, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, we might need to break it down. If it's way down the backlog, maybe we don't need to break it down because way down the backlog, and items that are way down the backlog anyway, we probably never deliver because new ideas are always better than the old ideas. So the new ideas come in on top and push the old ideas down. So yeah, I find that a useful technique. So right sizing for me is better, and maybe just counting the number of items that a team delivers per week, per day, per sprint, whatever your cadence is. I find that much more useful, particularly for a layer of cake teams where you've got dependencies in other teams. Estimated effort has very little correlation to how long things actually take. So it's more accurate typically to just count the number of items the team can deliver in a week, a day, a sprint, whatever your cadence is. And so whatever range of items they're used to delivering, if you're planning to put in much more items in the next sprint or the next week or whatever cadence you're using, then that's a kind of a signal that maybe you're putting too much work in. And so when people say, "I feel we've got capacity," your throughput is your capacity. There's an episode on that, so check that out. So that's story points and value points. Value points I'm a fan of. I've tried lots of formulae before to come up with some kind of sequence for the order of the backlog in terms of value. They're always wrong. But what's useful about wrong formulas is that at least it kind of puts things in the wrong order. So then manually, it's actually started a process. So then manually, you can kind of put things where you know they should go. And there's one very good coach I worked with before, and she was dealing with a product owner who said to her, "I can't order this. It's everything's critical. I just need everything." So she said, "No problem. I'll sort them alphabetically." And of course, that got a response then. So even sorting something alphabetically would they're in the wrong order, but now you've got started, and you can it's kind of unlocks things. It kind of gets you moving. So even though I'm not a fan of story points, sometimes it helps teams to understand the work better, and if that helps the team, good for them. But I wouldn't be relying on it for forecasting. Burn up charts aren't that reliable. If you want something much more reliable, consider throughput, or even better, throughput only for maybe for the current sprint, but Monte Carlo probabilistic forecasting. If you're looking for when will this be done, trying to answer that question, it'll come up with a forecast. It'll probably say 85% by this date, 95% by that date. In other words, 15% or 5% chance we won't deliver by that date. And then you say, and I'll give you a better forecast next week. In other words, it's just a very nice way of saying we don't know, actually. So that's it, story points and value points. So I got a comment here from Mike Levins. Thank you, Mike. Value points. Is there value in talking about these in some review sessions to get feedback from stakeholders? I think so, Mike. I think the more context we can get, the better. Where that might just get a little bit out of tilt is if you don't have everyone there. But maybe you've got the open space mindset and you say, well, whoever is there, and they're the right people and all that kind of stuff. You could say that. But there could be a danger that you've got a minority of stakeholders there, that a minority of customers, end users who might skew in terms of what's valuable. So hopefully you've got a good audience, Mike, at your reviews. But if you have, I think it'd be a great idea to get them to give some input in terms of how valuable things are. And it's useful to let people have a say, and then that will really help to inform the product owner's decision making. The product owner at the end of the day is going to make a decision on what the order is. And Mike is coming back saying, I agree, it helps in calibration and alignment of the team, product owner, stakeholders. Yeah. And I would sometimes even do it with the developers, Mike, as well. Sometimes the developers have very good business domain knowledge, and they really have very good insights, and it's really worth getting their insights. And also maybe there are some things that maybe the product owner is unaware of in terms of risk in the product, technical debt, for example, or some other maybe performance constraints around the design of or whatever we have. So it's good to do with stakeholders. I think it's also good to do it with developers. I've actually done it both ways, with the preference being work with stakeholders. But there's value in both of those exercises. So thank you very much for those questions and comments, Mike, and thank you, everyone. If anyone wants to submit a question, they can just contact me directly on whichever social media channel you're watching. And you can also leave a voice message, believe it or not, that can be featured on the show at anchor.fm/dailyflow/message. Thank you very much.